You meet someone for the first time, and before they finish their first sentence, something inside you has already decided, not consciously, not deliberately, just a quiet conclusion forming in the background, like a shadow that arrived before the light. You don't even notice it happening, but it's there. A silent verdict written in ink you can't erase, built from fragments you didn't know you were collecting. If any part of this feels familiar to you, you're not alone. And if you ever feel like sharing your experience, the comments are open. We all do this. We all judge. Not because we're cruel or shallow, but because the mind is always working, always organizing, always trying to make sense of the person standing in front of us. It happens in waiting rooms, in elevators, across cafe tables. It happens in silence, and most of the time, we never say it out loud. We just carry it, a private conclusion, a story we tell ourselves about someone we barely know. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about what actually happens inside, the mental habits we all share but rarely admit. The invisible moments when we look at another person and, without meaning to, we build an entire world around them, a world that says more about us than it ever could about them. The first impression that arises even before you realize you are judging. It begins before you're ready for it. Someone walks into the room, and in that first second maybe, less your mind has already moved. Not with words, not with thoughts you could name, just a feeling. A quiet sense of who they might be. It's not a choice. It's automatic, like breathing, like blinking. Your brain scanning for safety, for familiarity, for something it recognizes in the posture, the expression, the way they hold themselves. You tell yourself you're open-minded, that you wait to know people before forming opinions, and maybe you do later. But in that first moment, something else is already happening beneath the surface. A silent assessment, a flicker of comfort or discomfort, attraction or distance, trust or caution. It's so fast you don't catch it, but it's already shaping the way you'll listen to them, the way you'll interpret everything that comes next. And the strange part is, you can't stop it. You can notice it. Maybe you can catch yourself doing it, but you can't prevent it from happening. Because judgment isn't always a decision. Sometimes it's just the mind doing what it was built to do, sorting, categorizing, protecting, trying to understand a stranger in the only way it knows how, with fragments, with guesses, with shadows of people you've met before. The first impression isn't always accurate, but it's almost always there, qui est invisible already, written before conversation even starts. The unspoken stories you create about someone without ever confirming them. You see someone across the room, and without knowing anything real about them, you begin to write, not on paper, nor outlook, but somewhere in the back of your mind, a story starts to form. The way they dress tells you something. The way they laugh tells you more. The way they check their phone, the way they stand alone by the window, it all becomes evidence. Evidence of a life you've never seen, a personality you've never confirmed. Maybe you decide they're confident, or maybe you decide they're lonely. Maybe they seem like someone who has it all figured out, or maybe they seem like someone who's pretending. You don't ask. You don't verify. You just let the story build itself, piece by piece, until it feels true, until it becomes the lens through which you see them. And the longer you watch, the more the story solidifies, as if observation alone could make it real. But here's the part you don't think about: that story isn't about them, nor réali. It's about you, about the patterns you've learned to recognize, about the people you've known before, about the associations your mind makes automatically, without permission. You're not seeing them, you're seeing a reflection of your own expectations, a guess dressed up as certainty, and most of the time, you never find out if you were right. The story stays silent, unspoken, a private fiction you carry about a person who remains, in truth, a stranger. The habit of comparing other people's lives to your own in seconds. They mention something casual, a trip they took, a job they started, a relationship there in, and instantly, without meaning to, you measure it. Not against some objective standard, against your own life, your own choices, your own timeline. It happens so fast you barely notice, but it's there. A quiet calculation. Are they ahead of you, behind you, on a different path entirely? If they seem to have more, something tightens. Not always jealousy, sometimes just awareness, a reminder of what you don't have yet, or what you chose not to pursue. If they seem to have less, something else might stir. Relief, maybe, or guilt for feeling relieved. Either way, the comparison happens, automatic, invisible, a reflex you didn't ask for but can't entirely silence. And the strange thing is, you're not comparing lives, you're comparing narratives. The story they tell versus the story you tell yourself, but you only see the surface of theirs, the highlights, the moments they choose to share, while you know every doubt, every failure, every compromise in your own. So the comparison is never fair, it's never complete, it's just a feeling, a sense of where you stand in relation to someone whose real life you'll never fully see. The habit doesn't make you shallow, it makes you human, but it does shape the way you listen, the way you respond, the way you feel about yourself when they walk away. The quick judgment that stems from the tone of voice, not the words. They say something simple, something neutral, but the way they say it changes everything. The tone, the rhythm, the slight edge or softness in their voice. And before you process the meaning of their words, your mind has already reacted, not to what they said, to how they said it. A sharpness that feels like impatience, a flatness that feels like indifference, a hesitation that feels like uncertainty. You don't think it through, you just feel it, and once you felt it, it colors everything else. If their tone seemed cold, you might hear coldness in the next sentence too. If it seemed warm, you might forgive things you'd otherwise question. The content becomes secondary. The emotion beneath the words becomes the message, and you respond not to their meaning, but to the feeling they left in the air. A feeling that might have nothing to do with you. That might be exhaustion, distraction, the residue of a conversation they had an hour ago. But you don't know that. You only know what you heard. And what you heard becomes what you believe about them. A single moment, a single thing, that they're harsh, that they're kind, that they don't care, that they care too much, all from a sound, a vibration, a detail so small you couldn't even explain it if someone asked. The voice carries more than words. It carries assumptions, and those assumptions become judgments before you've even finished listening. The way small gestures lead to big conclusions in his mind. They glance at their watch. They cross their arms. They don't smile back right away. Small things, meaningless things, maybe, but in your mind, they start to mean something. The glance at the watch becomes impatience. The crossed arms become defensiveness. The delayed smile becomes rejection. You don't decide this consciously. It just happens. A gesture becomes a signal becomes a story, and the story becomes a conclusion you carry as if it were fact. You replay it later. The way they looked away when you were talking, the way they checked their phone while you were explaining something, and each replay adds weight, confirmation, evidence of something you already suspected, that they weren't interested, that they didn't respect your time, that they were judging you while you were busy judging them. The gesture grows in your memory, becomes louder than it ever was in the moment. But here's what you forget: gestures aren't always language. Sometimes a glance is just a glance. Sometimes crossed arms just mean they're cold. Sometimes the delayed smile is because their mind was somewhere else entirely. Not with you, not against you, just elsewhere. but you don't see that. You see what the gesture seems to suggest, and you respond to the suggestion, not the reality. Small gestures, big conclusions, and somewhere between the two, the truth gets lost. The internal dialogue that labels people while you remain silent. You're listening to them talk, but there's another conversation happening, one they can't hear, one you're having with yourself about them, a quiet commentary running beneath your nodding, beneath your polite responses. They're the type who always needs to be right. They seem insecure, they're trying too hard, labels forming in real time, silent verdicts written while your face shows nothing but attention, and once the label sticks, it becomes a filter. Everything they say gets interpreted through it. If you've decided they're arrogant, their confidence sounds like ego. If you've decided they're weak, their kindness sounds like people-pleasing. The label doesn't describe them, it shapes how you see them. It tells you what to notice and what to ignore, what to remember, what to s'englouard, a single category, and suddenly they're simplified, reduced, easier to understand, easier to dismiss. But the label says more about you than it does about them, about what bothers you, about what you value or fear, about the parts of yourself you recognize or reject in someone else. They're still talking, still being themselves, but you're no longer seeing them. You're seeing the label you assigned, the story you told, the conclusion you reached before they even finished their sentence. And they'll never know, because the dialogue stays internal. The judgment stays silent, and you walk away thinking you understood them, when all you really did was categorize them. The feeling of already knowing who someone's without ever having spoken them. You've never spoken to them, but you feel like you already know. Something about the way they carry themselves, the way they dress, the people they're standing with, the expression on their face when they think no one's watching. Itegate sonug, enough to form an opinion, enough to decide whether you'd like them or not, whether they're your kind of person, whether it's even worth finding out. It's a strange certainty, built on nothing concrete, on impressions, on resemblances to people you've met before. They remind you of someone, and that someone becomes the template, the reference point. And without realizing it, you've already written their personality, their values, their story, all from a distance, all from silence, as if proximity weren't necessary, as if observation were the same as knowing, but knowing requires conversation, requires vulnerability, requires letting someone be more than the story you invented, and most of the time, you never get there. You stay in the assumption, in the comfortable distance where your version of them can remain unchallenged, where they can stay simple, predictable, exactly who you decided they were from across the room. The feeling of knowing is powerful, but it's rarely accurate. It's just familiar, and sometimes familiar is easier than true. Judgment changes depending on your mood that day. You meet them on a good day, and they seem fine, pleasant, even their jokes land. Their energy feels right. You leave thinking they're someone you could get along with, but meet them again on a different day when you're tired, when you're stressed, when something else is weighing on you, and suddenly everything about them feels different. The same jokes feel forced. The same energy feels exhausting. Nothing about them changed, but everything about how you see them did. Your mood becomes the lens. When you're open, people seem interesting. When you're closed, they seem intrusive. When you're confident, their quirks are charming. When you're insecure, those same quirks feel like judgments. You don't realize it's happening. You just think you're seeing them clearly. That today, for some reason, you're noticing things you missed before. But what you're really noticing is yourself, your own state, your own capacity, reflected back through someone who was just being themselves. And this is how the same person can be both likable and unbearable depending on the day. How you can feel warmth toward them one moment and irritation the next. not because they shifted, but because you did. And the judgment you form, positive or negative, has less to do with who they are and more to do with who you were when you met them. The verdict isn't permanent, it's conditional, shaped by variables you're not even aware of. And that's the uncomfortable truth sometimes. Your judgment of others is just a reflection of your own internal weather. The assumptions you make about intentions without any proof. They cancel plans, and you don't just accept it, you interpret it. They didn't want to come. They're avoiding you. They found something better. You don't have evidence, just a feeling, a suspicion, and that suspicion becomes the explanation, the real reason behind what they said. You stop listening to their words and start listening to what you think those words are hiding. Someone doesn't text back right away, and suddenly you're building a narrative. They're upset. They're losing interest. They're being passive-aggressive. You don't ask. You don't clarify. You just assume. And the assumption grows until it feels like certainty, until their silence becomes a message you wrote yourself, a message that might have nothing to do with what they actually meant or didn't mean or didn't think about at all. The mind wants explanations. It wants reasons. And when the real reason isn't available, it invents one. It fills the gap with guesses, with fear, with patterns from past experiences that may not apply here. And those guesses become facts in your head, facts you react to, facts that shape how you feel about someone who might not even know they're being judged. Intentions are invisible, but you treat them like they're obvious, like you can read between the lines, like you know what someone meant even when they haven't said it. And most of the time, you're just reading yourself. The moment you realize you've judged someone else the same way, you've already judged yourself. And then it happens. You're watching someone fumble through a conversation and something shifts, a recognition, a strange familiarity. You've seen this before, not in them, in yourself. The way they hesitate before speaking, the way they laugh a little too loud to cover discomfort, the way they apologize for things that don't need apologies. You've done all of it, and suddenly the judgment softens because you're not looking at a stranger anymore. You're looking at a mirror. The same things you criticized in them are the same things you've hated in yourself. The insecurity, the need for approval, the trying too hard, and for a moment, the labels fall away. The stories you built collapse because you can't judge them without judging yourself. You can't call them weak without admitting your own fragility. You can't call them fake without acknowledging the masks you wear. The judgment was never really about them. It was always about you, about the parts of yourself you recognize but don't want to see. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because if you've been harsh with them, you've been harsh with yourself. If you've dismissed them, you've dismissed parts of your own humanity. The judgment circles back, quiet, inevitable, and you realize that every conclusion you drew about another person was just a conversation you were having with your own reflection. The moment passes, but it leaves something behind. A question not about them, about you, about what you're really judging when you look at someone else, and whether, maybe, you've been looking in the wrong direction all along. So, maybe judgment isn't the enemy. Maybe it's just part of being human, part of trying to make sense of a world full of people you'll never fully understand. You look at someone, and your mind does what it's always done, tries to organize, tries to protect, tries to predict. It's not cruelty. It's not malice. It's just the way the brain moves through uncertainty, through silence, through the distance between you and everyone else. But here's what matters. Knowing that it happens doesn't mean you have to let it control you. You can notice the judgment. You can see it forming. And in that moment of awareness, you can choose to pause, to question, to leave room for the possibility possibility that your first impression, your quick conclusion, your silent verdict might just be incomplete. That the person in front of you is more than the story you wrote, more than the label you assigned, more than the reflection of your own fears or insecurities. Because the truth is, everyone is doing this. Everyone is watching. Everyone is guessing. Everyone is carrying silent judgments about people they barely know. And everyone, at some point, has been on the other side of it too, misunderstood, reduced, judged for things they never said or meant. It's a cycle, a quiet, invisible cycle, and the only way out is to recognize it, to see it in yourself, to be honest about the distance between what you assume and what's actually true. You'll never stop judging entirely, but you can start noticing. And noticing is where everything begins to shift, where the stories become softer, where the conclusions become questions, where the stranger across the room gets a chance to be more than the version of them you invented in your head. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. More to explore, more to notice, more of these quiet truths we all carry but rarely name.